The Holy Gospel is written in the Gospel according to St. John, the 14th chapter. Jesus said, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you will also live. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. They who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me, and those who love me will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them." And this is the gospel of the Lord. O God, you have prepared for those who love you such good things as surpass our understanding. Pour into our hearts love toward you. How do you love God? I think the gospel is very clear. It's a response to an experience of God's own love. That's the response that Paul made. You heard about his visit to the Areopagus in Athens, didn't you, just this morning? The marketplace. Can you imagine how bewildering that must have seemed to him? Looking around at all these people and all these things, and people were actually worshiping a lot of them. There's an old quip about ancient people and their attitudes toward religion. It goes like this: tell me what you eat, and I'll tell you who your God is. Can you just picture this? We're a little more subtle, at least. But we're groping around too, trying to get what we need by making it all right with all the powers that are in our lives. A lot of the time. What do they call it? Capitalism? So here's Paul, a very different kind of creature who clearly understands what he's talking about when he says that God created people so that they could look for God and maybe find God and maybe be found by God. It's not just true for Paul, it's true for everyone who ever breathed. You've heard about the God-shaped vacuum in each of us, haven't you? I think the Japanese talk about a separate stomach just for rice. Well, this empty space is just for God. The trick is that God is the one who has to fill it, and God begins by filling it, and then we love God. And we become very different from the folks who are groping around in the marketplace for the right God to please the right way and get the right things because they think that's what they need. Once you experience God, you just don't need anything anymore, at least for a little while. Take George, for instance. He wasn't in a marketplace. I might have told you about George before. I'm not sure. He was the one who on a ferry. And he had been groping around all his life. And he wasn't really filled with anything except a little bit of despair that particular day, even though he's a very successful man. And so he said, God, if you really are God, would you let me know about it? Do something? And so the wind came up. Oh, if it's that's you? Well, would you do something else? The wind stopped. Now, like everything else that happens of this sort, it's not so much the fact of what has happened, but what changes in us because it happened. You know, really, if you heard all the words of Jesus, like the ones they heard, would that really be the good news? I don't think so. Great words. The good news is what happened to them, what they made of those words because something came over them. God. So God came over George, and there's never been a happier 60-year-old in the world. Acted like a 6-year-old child filled with joy. And he stayed that way. So there's George, and there's Paul, and there's people like us who, honestly, most of the time, we really are pretty fulfilled. Even now. I haven't talked with any of you who've really been in any despair yet. I've talked with some of you who are struggling, but not despair, and not without belief that it's going to be okay. So there it is. God is God because God makes God known. That's how we know. And we respond. It's not that we found God, God found us. It's the love of Jesus. Jesus, the visible image of the invisible God. We can recognize God because we can know about Jesus. And we know about Jesus because Jesus gives the Holy Spirit. And it all makes sense because it happens to us. And we hold on to it at the bad times because we know that the answer to this particular time is not everything's going to be all right because the president made it right. We fixed it. No, because God makes sense of it and gets us through it with that sense. And God cares about everyone who is trying to get through it. And yes, it is a teaching time. The way of Jesus still works. So let's hang on to that. It means picking up a cross. Well, we sort of know a little bit about that these days, don't we? And it means moving toward a resurrection. Rogation Sunday Would you believe I happened to be talking to you on Friday? Well, spring came, didn't it? God comes. Like Paul, we need to stand in our own peculiar ways in the marketplace of life and be ready to say something for God just by the way we are, and the joy that has nothing to do with how much we have. Amen. The peace of the Lord be always with you.